Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Altogether Lovely, and I know it's been forever since I have filmed a video. All I can say is that life happened and there have been so many things going on. It's been a really busy summer, and so that's the reason why I haven't had a chance to actually sit down behind the camera and to film a video for you guys. But today I thought was a special day for me to film this video in particular. As you can tell, today's video is going to be all about my preeclampsia story. Today is the third birthday of my son Malachi. He is in heaven today, and I just thought, you know, after all these years of not really being able to talk about it without getting super emotional about it, I just thought I would sit down on his third birthday and share my story with you all. Preeclampsia is something that not a lot of people are very educated on. It is a very common disease that happens in pregnancy. So first of all, just to kind of go over what preeclampsia is, just to put in layman's terms as simply as possible, preeclampsia is very high blood pressure during pregnancy. Preeclampsia usually comes on towards the end of your pregnancy, so usually about the third trimester. In my case, the preeclampsia, the high blood pressure and all that stuff started coming on very early. So I was about 16 weeks into my pregnancy when I started experiencing the different symptoms of preeclampsia. It wasn't until the 4th month of pregnancy that we knew that there was something wrong with the baby. It was a really hard pregnancy. It was my first pregnancy. My husband and I had gotten pregnant 3 years after we got married, because that's when we decided we wanted to start a family. And so we got pregnant. Thank God we didn't have an issue getting pregnant. My issue was just how sick I was. I was very sick during those first 4 months of my pregnancy, and I thought that it was just something that was just really normal. I know that a lot of women experience sickness whenever they're pregnant, and I just assumed that this was just how it was going to be for me during my pregnancy. My mom had really bad pregnancies all 9 months of her pregnancy, and so I know that there are certain aspects of your pregnancy that could be hereditary and could be just like how it was for your mother. I accepted at that point that I was just going to have a really terrible pregnancy for the whole 9 months. I just kind of kept telling myself that, you know what, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to be over. I am going to have my healthy baby, and I'm just going to look back at this whole sickly experience and just rejoice because I have my baby here finally. But unfortunately, in our situation with Malachi, it didn't happen that way at all. We found out that just through different ultrasounds that we were having throughout the pregnancy, that there were different complications that were going on in utero. And without getting into too many specific details, because I feel like this video could be really long, the more I talk about it, the more that I'm thinking about it right now, I could get emotional, and I don't want to do that. So we're not going to do that. So I don't want to skew anybody in the wrong direction. I am making this video today just so that people who are sort of going through the same thing, or who have gone through the same thing as me, can just have something to relate to, just to see another person's viewpoint and experience and just the things that I went through. Whenever I looked up what exactly preeclampsia was, it's a disorder in pregnancy, and it's characterized by high blood pressure and a large amount of protein in the urine. So whenever I would go to my appointment, even before I found out that I had the preeclampsia, they would always make me pee in a cup. And it was always okay. There was never any protein in my urine. There was nothing that they were concerned about. Everything was just going really well. I was just really sick. It wasn't until about my 16th week of pregnancy, which is about 4 months, I started to gain weight rapidly. When I mean by gaining weight rapidly, I mean I would have an appointment, and then 2 weeks later I would have an appointment, and I would have already gained like 8 pounds in the 2 weeks, which is definitely a sign that they look for. You're not supposed to be gaining weight that quickly. It was really swollen. You just couldn't even recognize who I was, because I was just so bloated and so there's a different look that you have about you when, and I think doctors and nurses obviously can notice this, but you just look different. You just look like there's something seriously wrong with you. Urine analysis tests were all always normal. And so the scary thing about preeclampsia is that the onset of it happens really, really fast. I literally had no protein in my urine at all one day, and then the very next day, the onset of it was just like a ton of bricks. It just hit me really, really fast. And throughout the course of the pregnancy, I mean, it was really, really hard. We had a whole bunch of people telling us all different types of things. We had to meet with a genetic counselor that was just telling us the most horrific things that you just could not imagine that anybody would ever be telling you when you're pregnant with your first child. Young couple, excited about this pregnancy, excited to have a baby, and then you have all these different things that are just thrown at you as far as like what could go wrong and like, just the different things that they're finding. And it was a really, really hard time in our lives. And I know that the main thing that got us through that experience is our faith in God. Without our faith in God, I guarantee you we would not be here today. That is the one thing that has gotten us through, the love of our friends and our family, and just the support, the overwhelming support that we got from people who were just praying for us and just, giving us those words of encouragement about, it's gonna be okay. God's in control of the situation. He knows what he's doing. He knows everything that's going on with your baby boy. I truly believed all of those things, although there was a certain time throughout the pregnancy when they told me that they didn't know if the baby was even gonna survive during birth, or they didn't know how long he was gonna survive after he was born. These are all things that a pregnant woman does not want to hear. And it's already hard enough just to be pregnant and just to experience those emotions on top of just the emotions you already have being pregnant. It was very difficult, but like I said, our faith in God and our friends and our family and just people were there for us, praying for us, and that's really what got us through. There were times when I was even just really doubting God. I mean, big time doubting God, and that's like the worst thing that I could have done, but it was just naturally just from like a human perspective, it was just what I was doing. I just didn't understand why this was happening, and so it was really crazy. But my husband was there, and he was really supportive, and he just kind of put me on the right track again, and it was just, everything was good again. Another really important thing that you have to understand about preeclampsia is that it's very, very dangerous for the mother and for the baby. Preeclampsia, like I mentioned before, is really, really severely high blood pressure during pregnancy. And you might be wondering, well, what is high? Too high in pregnancy is anything 140 over 90. Normal blood pressure, I think from a medical standpoint, is 120 over 80. And I guess give or take, I don't know, I guess it depends on your age and how big you are and things like that. But in pregnancy, they never want to see you get over 140 over 90. And a lot of the times when I would go into the hospital for my doctor's appointments, it would be like in the 150s and the 160s. And I think the highest that I actually had in the hospital was my very last appointment before they decided to induce me. I think it was like 175 over like 110 or something. It was just crazy. That was just sort of the gist of the pregnancy. It was just a really hard pregnancy. I was physically struggling, I was mentally struggling, emotionally. There was so many things I was struggling with throughout this pregnancy. Just dragged on and on. I had my mother staying with me from Texas, and I'm sure that was just like the hardest thing for her to be around me because I was just really crabby, just really moody. I didn't know why I was in the position I was in. I didn't even know if all the suffering that was happening with me physically was even gonna amount to anything, because I didn't even know if my baby was gonna live or not. And that to me is, I don't know, I feel like if you haven't experienced that, it's probably really hard to even fathom somebody going through something like that. So it wasn't until a 24-week appointment, which at this point I was kind of going back and forth from home to the hospital a lot because they were really monitoring me. I was considered a high-risk pregnancy at that point. I was meeting with the perinatologist who I was getting ultrasounds all the time, and they were really just trying to monitor myself and the baby as much as they could. I gotta say that I really do appreciate, the doctors and nurses and everyone who took care of me, even though there was a lot of information that was told to me that I didn't want to hear and that I just didn't understand. And, I felt like a lot of the doctors just didn't have good bedside manner. There were so many things that were just making me so upset throughout the process. But looking back, I can say that I really appreciate those people because they are professional and they're just doing their job, and I understand that now. It's just at the time, it was just really hard to kind of take all of that in. It wasn't until my 24-week appointment with a perinatologist that I knew that things were really serious. The doctor walked into the room to do my ultrasound, and she took one look at me and she said, "You need to go to labor and delivery immediately." And I just thought to myself, like, this is crazy. Like, what are you talking about, woman? Like, I'm only 24 weeks. There's no way I can have this. Like, the baby's not done cooking. I mean, he's got to stay in there longer. I can't have this baby now. He's too young. He's not developed fully yet. All these things were kind of going through my mind, and she just, I don't know what it was. She's a professional, I guess, and she could see on my face, she could see my body, she could see how swollen I was and how my face just didn't look right at that point. And she said, "You've got to go to labor and delivery right now. You need to call your husband. You need to tell him to get up here. You need to be induced. You're not doing well." And I just remember, after the doctor walked back out of the room, I just remember bursting into tears. There was a part of me that was like, okay, well, maybe this will all be over soon and I can just have my baby and he'll be here a little early, but it's okay. We'll be caring for him. We'll be, the doctors are going to take their measures to make sure that he's okay. So there was that aspect of everything that was okay, but then there was the aspect of, it's too early. What if he doesn't survive? What if there's major complications? And I called my husband. I told him what was going on. I was immediately taken to labor and delivery. Whatever that drug is that helps you to kind of get your contractions going. I'm sorry, I drew a blank right now. And I was in labor with Malachi for about 16 hours. Longest 16 hours of my life. It was so draining and just crazy that I was in that position and that we were in that position, that we were having our child so early on. I don't remember exactly what time it was because there's so many things about that time in my life where it really is a blur. Like, I don't remember, and I don't know if it's because I choose not to remember it or if it's just because of my bad memory. I'm not sure. It could be either or. I ended up delivering Malachi Varghese John, and he was 24 weeks. He was 2 pounds and I think 7 ounces, tiny little thing. And it turned out that as he was born, the process of labor was just too hard for him, and he didn't even make it out of the canal with a heartbeat. The neonatal ICU people that we want them there, we want them to intervene if they need to. And everybody, it was just like so many people in the room as I was delivering, medical staff. And, we said we wanted them to make sure to do whatever they could to save him if they needed to intervene with anything. And it turns out that they didn't have to do anything, which, I feel like that's a blessing that our little 2-pound baby didn't have to go through any type of surgery or, didn't have to be in a position where he was in any pain. His spirit already left and he went to be with the Lord, and that's the biggest joy that we could get. Now, looking back, I know it seems like I'm really strong, and I know that it seems like, wow, it just doesn't even seem like this is affecting her. It's really, really affecting me, and it affected me for so long. This wasn't, a baby that I lost when I was, 6 weeks or 8 weeks. This is a baby that I lost when I was 6 months pregnant. It was really hard. It was a really traumatizing experience for me, but in the end, when I look back on everything, it is a blessing. I know that he's in heaven. I know that he is okay. I know that he is healthy and happy. And that is really all that matters to me. Experience in my life, I would never take it back for anything. I think that it was a growing experience for me as an individual. I think it was a growing experience for my husband and I in our marriage, and just spiritually, I think I needed to know that God is there and that He is there to protect, and He's not there to hurt. He is there to, He's just reminding us every day that He is in control and He knows what's best for us. And 3 months after Malachi was born and went to be in heaven, I got pregnant with my daughter Katie, and she is the biggest joy in my life. She is the greatest blessing that God could have given us so soon after we had lost our first blessing. All this to say that there are certain things that happen in our life and you don't understand why. There are a lot of people that come in and out of your life, and there are experiences that you go through and you just don't understand why these types of things would ever happen to you. But I'm here to say that it's what you make of those situations. You can use those experiences to try to help other people who might be going through the same thing, or who might have experienced the same thing that you have experienced. And I'm a really big believer in, if you can be relatable to people and you can be vulnerable in front of others, that others will be able to confide in you and to trust you because you've gone through it, you've experienced it. This video wasn't about, and it wasn't an educational video about preeclampsia. It was more sharing my story with you. There's so many details that I left out of this video, but there are details that are not even coming to me right now. I'm just kind of speaking from my heart, and I didn't plan what I was going to say at all. It's just something that I sat down, I just started talking about it. And the thing that motivated me to do that today was the fact that it's Malachi's 3rd birthday today, and I just think that it was time for me to get out there and talk about it, and I'm glad that I did. And I want anybody who has had a similar experience with preeclampsia, or just loss. I know so many people, so many members of my family and friends that have had miscarriages, multiple miscarriages, and loss is loss. And for me, the thought of getting pregnant again or having more kids, it comes with a lot of anxiety. And so just know that for anybody who has experienced preeclampsia in your pregnancies, that I understand. I've been there and I've done that, and I know how it feels. I will say that with my pregnancy with my daughter, it was really, really smooth and it went really well. And I was sick for the first trimester, which is normal. I mean, I had the morning sickness and all of that. My blood pressure was fine. It was just fine with the second pregnancy. So did have the onset of preeclampsia come on in my second pregnancy, but it only came on at 36 weeks. And so I was very late in my pregnancy before I was starting to have higher blood pressure. And I was in the hospital for about a week with Katie, and I ended up getting induced at 37 weeks, which is full term. The baby was healthy. I mean, everything was great. She didn't have to be in the NICU at all. This goes to show you that, God may take away, but He also gives. He gives and He takes away. I want to encourage anyone who's been through it, please reach out to me. If you want anyone to talk to, or if you need advice, or just want to share your experience with me, please do reach out to me. Comment on this video, give this video a thumbs up. Just whatever way that you want to communicate with me, please do it, because I'm somebody will be there and who understands. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was somewhat informative, and I hope that it was relatable to anybody that has gone through it or is going through it now. Have a blessed day. Bye.